But let's talk about, and if I bring up a topic you're not comfortable with, just let me know.
Okay.
Okay, so obviously you're married, right?
Yep.
And I told you I wanted to talk to you about, you have a son, correct? Or
Yes.
all right, and I wanted to talk to you about that and how you have, I guess, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, made the decision that you want to steer him away from marriage, as I guess the term is like an awakened while married man. I mean, the reasons are obvious, but do you want to like expand on that and tell us exactly how you came to that decision and whether or not your wife has anything bad to say about that
Well,
or good to say
matter of
about
fact,
that or
we had a little conversation about that last night because she's watched a couple of my videos.
Mhm.
Again, I don't know what it is, but with women, they just don't seem to get it. They listen to like 5 minutes of one video,
no,
read half of an article, and then like their mind is made up. I think what it is, a lot of it is they only hear what they want to hear,
yeah, yeah,
and I definitely think that she's my wife. That is definitely projecting some of this stuff onto herself because
yeah,
you know for the most part she is a Newalt, but she's still a woman
yeah, yeah,
and she has female biology.
yeah, yeah.
And
Well, what does that conversation sound like? I mean, do you want to go into any details?
no,
Like, does she?
no, I'm gonna go into it.
Okay,
And
cool.
um, I okay, I know this was something I said in one of my videos was that being married is like constantly having a gun pointed to your head,
Mm,
and she takes that she then takes that and internalizes it, and it becomes I have you think I have a gun pointed at your head all the time. And I said, not figuratively or not physically, but and I've said this before. Let's say you and I have an argument, and we have this busybody neighbor who walks around the whole neighborhood. If she calls 911, I'm fucked.
yeah, yeah,
That's all there is to it. I'm fucked. And then if the cop shows up, I'm not trying to turn this into a racism conversation, but
yeah,
if one of the cops is racist, I'm even more fucked.
yeah, yeah. No,
Um,
it's true. It's true. Um,
so
yeah,
I can't logically and honestly say that marriage is a good idea for my son. Now, would I like him to be able to get married at some point if he wants to? Yeah, if he wants to. But for now, until some of this shit changes, I would highly recommend against it.
yeah. And
Um,
what are if you don't mind me asking, what are the did you even know about MGTOW when you were married, or like how
no,
did that?
no.
Okay, so when did you come to the manosphere and like discover all this stuff, and how long after you were married did that happen?
I'd say it was, let's see, probably about 4 or 5 years after I'd been married. I went to Iraq twice.
Okay,
I was up in Alaska. I started listening to like conspiracy theory stuff. Like actually, I started listening to your stuff too back in the day.
okay,
And I stumbled across feminism,
yeah,
and I was just like, wow, this is holy shit. This is basically what seems to have really had a severe effect on the black community. And then I kind of got into like some counter feminist stuff like Girl Rights What, You, A Voice for Men,
uh-huh.
that whole bit. And I thought about it, and I was like, well, being an anti-feminist isn't going to work because, obvious reasons.
Yeah,
We've got a very gynocentric society. We've got, human nature, which is, in a lot of ways, we as men, will most of us would do damn near anything to, protect our women or something to, to
yeah,
that
yeah,
effect.
yeah. And so what now? How long have you been married? Yeah, yeah.
10, 11 years, something like that. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you got like so about 5 years into it, you started on this process of discovery. Very good. Yeah, I just want to stress that because there's a lot of talk in MGTOW about how it's some kind of enmity between married men and MGTOW, right? And although we do make that distinction that MGTOW aren't married, it doesn't mean we have any malicious. And of course, we're all individuals. I'm sure you could find somebody who does have some sort of beef with married men. I don't, and I want to dispel that rumor now. But it's just, I think that married men can be an ally to MGTOW. I unfortunately do not envy your situation in which, let's be honest, if your wife did want to, just bring the heavy hand of the government down on you, she could, and there'd be very little you could do about it. And I of course don't envy that position, but I don't think that we should alienate or turn away men or whatever, because married men specifically, because married men have kids, right, and boys, and a lot of times they can tell them, look, this is the reality of the situation. And look, marriage is not something to play around with. It's I've seen too many men completely destroyed and ruined by marriage. And if you're going to take that decision, of course you're free to, but that is a big decision that can potentially culminate in financial and emotional ruin, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, we have to tell, if you make this decision, that's fine, but it's healthy to tell your kids at least these are the risks,
Right.
And have you had that conversation with him, or you're waiting till he gets older, or?
I gotta wait till he gets older. He does not care. He's all into his Legos, Minecraft, stuff like that.
Very cool. So he's at the age now where he's like playing video games and stuff like that. And
yeah.
How old is he now?
He's 10.
10. Okay, very cool. So so he's playing Minecraft. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I made a video not too long ago about
Your double helix.
Yeah. It's great to give them a game that they can explore how to create things with. Halo is fun, and Call of Duty is fun, but you're really just shooting at a target. But with Minecraft, you actually build things, which I think is great.
Right.
If you solidify that at an early age, who knows what'll happen, right?
That's, and like I said, man, my wife homeschools too.
Oh, very good. Okay.
So, she's definitely not, I guess you could say, one of these feminist bitches out here, but, like I said, there's a lot of evil out there in the world, and I'm not gonna tell my son, hey, go ahead, stick your head in that lion's mouth. He won't bite.
Yeah, and you know what? Look, what is the downside? This is what I could never understand: is what is the downside to not getting married? You can still have a relationship if you want one, right? I mean, you can still have somebody. Let's say somebody's religious, right? They want a religious marriage. Since when? If we go back to history and look at the ancient Israelites, did they have like city halls where they could walk into and get a marriage license? They didn't, right? None of this happened. People just, did some kind of ceremony or whatever, and they were married, right? I mean, so, you could have that with somebody if you want, and you don't have to ask the government for permission. You don't have to beg anybody for a rubber stamp validating your way of life. It's just, this is what I don't understand about the gays. I don't know why they wanted this, but, apparently it was a big deal to them. Now, unfortunately, they're going to suffer the ramifications of divorce and join the rest of us. Maybe that'll initiate some kind of change. Who knows?
I think if there are going to be any type of changes in marriage and stuff like that, I think it's definitely going to happen once. And I'm not saying this to be an asshole or nothing, but lesbian relationships are way, or lesbian marriages are way more. They have like the highest divorce rates. There was some
not just the highest divorce rates, but the highest domestic violence rate. Like this is like this is like an untalked about thing for the most part, where lesbian relationships are extremely violent, like
Yeah.
much more so than homosexual men, than heterosexual couples. Just of course though, but like if you want to bring that up and bring that into the public consciousness, then some woman somewhere is going to have to be blamed, and we can't have that, right? So I mean, of course, it's not going to be talked about. It's going to be pushed under the rug, but we see a lot of lesbians relationships in particular are very interesting. I've observed, this is anecdotal, I have no evidence to back this up. I've observed that the most violent lesbian relationships that I've seen are the ones where I'm sure you're familiar with, like I guess the terminology is they have the lipstick lesbian and then the stud or whatever, the butch or whatever. I've observed that those particular lesbian relationships are the ones where I've seen the most domestic violence. I still remember to this day, when I was going to school, I used to talk with this one lesbian girl who was cool for the most part, but she was like one that tried to like emulate manhood or masculinity, right. And she had this like penchant for, in the end we ended up like she was like one of the guys basically, and we kind of accepted her into our group or whatever. But in the end, she had this like penchant for every time like the topic of sex would turn up, she would like have to like brag about how she could bang her girlfriend like better than any of us guys or whatever. And it got to the point where it was like contrived and kind of rude. So we just told her to kind of go fuck herself or whatever. But it's like to me, it feels, in my experience with them, it feels as though they have something to prove, and what they're trying to prove is that they could be just as masculine as men, and so they hyper fixate on what they think masculinity is, which to them is like hypersexual and even hyper violent, and they try to emulate that. And so that's what I think causes that kind of dynamic. But again, I don't have any like hardcore evidence to back that up. It's just what I've observed.
Yeah, and then I've got a cousin on my wife's side. She's a lesbian. She was in a very abusive relationship. I think she broke up with her. Got out of that relationship. No, I think they're still together, and now they have a child.
Okay, so that was done through adoption or surrogacy, or
one of the two. I don't really. I think it was surrogacy.
Okay. Did you hear? By the way, did you hear about this whole? I wrote an article out about it. Is the Sherry Shepherd situation, or?
Yeah, I was glancing at that at work, man. What the hell?
Yeah, it turns out. I mean, I don't know if you know the details, but she got married to her now ex-husband, and so she she agreed to take custody of a child conceived through a surrogate mother. So I'm assuming through like IVF. I believe it was IVF. It wasn't like what they call a gestational surrogate, which is a woman that conceives the natural way with the man or whatever. It was like actual. She had eggs implanted into her. The eggs. None of the eggs belonged to Sherry Shepherd, which, if we do decide to upload this, for those of you who don't know, Sherry Shepherd is one of the women on The View, or one of the women who used to be on The View. And she, so she says, not my egg, right? After the divorce happens, she's like, I want none of this. She abandons the surrogate, who gave birth to the surrogate child. And now the state is coming after the surrogate mother for child support. The husband, ex-husband, is suing Sherry Shepherd and just won, and now she has to pay $4,000 a month for the surrogate child. Pretty crazy, isn't it?
It is, man.
Yeah, and like that's what I'm saying. With these situations, I think is when you're going to start to see alimony change, right? Or not alimony, but like the crazy. Well, yeah, it's all wrapped up together anyway. So if you see changes to like alimony, you'll likely see changes to the like criminal fucking child support racket. We live in interesting times, and
it's really sad that that's what it has to come to. Is that some either not that there's anything, just it's going to have to take
Yeah. Well, it's
Or
going to have to take women being victimized and
yeah,
extorted
right.
in order for this to change.
It's horrible. It's
Yeah.
horrible. And like when I have these arguments with my wife about this stuff, I'm just like, look, don't you? I mean, she didn't even know what manspreading was. The guy who got arrested.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm just like, do you see this shit? This is horrible. This is
Yeah.
what's going on with men these days.
It's the criminalization of masculinity. You know,
Right.
it's really fucking crazy, man. I mean, you become once you spend enough time in this world, maybe it's just cognitive bias, but you become able to tease out examples of these things that people don't or wouldn't normally see. And then you start to see it in a lot of places. You know, it would appear, and again, I admit to cognitive bias, that our entire society really is hostile to men. If you're like, it's almost as though if you go to various public places to socialize or whatever, people are more comfortable around you if you have a woman with you. Women
Isn't
kind
that
of
strange?
was that.
And I said, yeah, isn't that strange?
Yeah, because women serve as like in an entire. You could take a group of hundreds of people, and if you're just some random dude that walks up and tries to talk to people, the likelihood that you're going to be branded as creepy or weird is extremely high. But women seem to have some sort of calming effect on that, meaning that our society views women as naturally more, or naturally, less prone to antisocial or violent behavior. Which is extremely fucking destructive when you take into account that women on average get much shorter sentences than men for the same crimes. It's I mean I don't know. We try to erect a as fair and as equal a society as we can, but I don't know if we'll ever get past this. You know.
I don't. It's going to take a lot of introspection, and I don't think most people are capable of that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I mean, I let me ask you because I honestly have no idea what your opinion is on this, but what do you think about men's rights activism? Can some change be made? I mean, I'm torn between this myself. I sometimes go back and forth. Between saying, maybe MGTOW should embark on some kind of activism with the knowledge that human nature is going to have this gynocentric effect and really there's nothing we can do to get around that, but we can at least try. And then sometimes I say, well, maybe it's just completely hopeless. Any opinions on that?
I don't think it's completely hopeless. I mean, we don't have any ill will towards the men's rights movement.
Sure.
I think they're definitely doing something as far as bringing these issues to light more on the mainstream, type of thing. But at the same time, I don't really think they're going to get anywhere. Mm-hmm. I really don't. I think that's why I'm more on the MGTOW side of the house, because I think that once more men, just like the herbivore movement in Japan, once more men start moving away, then that's when I think shit is going to actually get changed. Yeah. Now, from what I'm seeing over in Japan, they keep, they got all kinds of new stupid taxes and this, that.
Oh yeah.
Now, I read something about they want to charge like a good-looking man tax or something because those guys are getting laid, but the other guys aren't.
Yeah. Well, look, there's always this problem of, unfortunately, we have, and I don't know if there's any other way to do this, but we have set up our civilization based off of capitalizing off the human reproductive instinct. Mm-hmm. So we have to, right? If you want good proles that produce and buy things and drive your economies, you have to find a way to get people to be reproducing, to be marrying, and getting men specifically to have obligations, because men, let's face it, do the vast majority of work in any civilization or society. There's this problem of, if we had the discipline as a species to say to ourselves, okay, we're going to stop this constant fucking sprint for like more and more and more, right? And we're going to stop these economies that are built off of perpetual growth and the human reproductive instinct, and maybe our economies would kind of slow down, but then peter out at some kind of reasonable and more natural level. But at this point, it seems like we're just running a giant sprint to just make more and more and more. And I hate to sound like an environmentalist, but, you know, it's not doing our planet any good. You see, like, the fastest growing economies, China or whatever, and they're, like, horrifically polluted.
Yeah, no drinking water over there.
Oh, yeah, yeah. They're I don't know, you know, I don't know how accurate this is, but I saw something along the lines of, like, China, some kind of report saying that they're going to run out of, like a sustainable level of fresh water in, like, 40 or 50 years.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, the smog there is incredible. There's like cancers like shooting through the roof, and people that don't even smoke are getting cancer at like an extraordinary rate. It's just, and yeah, you know, it's just, it's an unnatural, I think, race to the top, the way our current economies and societies are structured, and something's got to give at some point. And frankly, I don't know what that something's going to be. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't look good.
No, it doesn't. And yeah, so that's why I'm more supportive of MGTOW than of men's rights. So
what do you, and you know, I know there's controversy surrounding this, but what do you think about the people that kind of think that if we just, you know, get rid of government, this thing will kind of autocorrect? I mean, any opinions on that? You know my opinions because I'm assuming you've listened to my video, but again, you know, diverse opinions are welcome here. Disagreements, agreements, other perspectives on that, as anything at all?
I am somewhat of an anarcho-capitalist, mm-hmm. And example, the little thing you did in Shedding of the Ego about the what was that show, that survival show?
Ah, yes, Naked and Afraid.
Right, you know, and I really hate to say this, but you know, as far as our natural roles as human beings, I think that's what works. And once you take a show like that mm-hmm. and put people, men and women, in a more natural environment, yeah. It basically all goes right back into our historic and traditional gender roles.
Well, like, see, I actually agree with you on that. In the natural state, let's say, you know, you take a bunch of men and women and drop them off in the wilderness, and just basically, you know, leave them to figure it out. What's most likely going to happen is that the men are going to go out and, you know, get food, and the women are going to kind of stay, you know, the men are going to protect the women. Yes, this is what we default to, of course. Of course. The problem is when we're now dealing with a society where, to a degree, this no longer applies because male labor is being supplanted by technology, and, you know, all sorts of technologies are coming into being that are kind of throwing all of this out of whack, and women are, of course, the advent of female suffrage has kind of turned all of this. I mean, they're back in some wilderness or whatever, in Naked and Afraid or whatever. The elements have a vote, right? The elements have a vote, and that the elements supersede the votes of either men or women. Right? They say, this is what I want, and the men and women have to follow that, because if they don't, they'll starve. Right? Here in civilization, where there's food on demand at all times, electricity on demand at all times, we are insulated from those effects. And so, you know, the gender roles no longer apply to a degree. You know, but continue on, anarcho-capitalism and all that. Continue on.
So, I have a tendency to just break things down to that very simplistic level. And, you know, like you said, you're right. You know, in this modern day and age, we have, you know, a lot of technology and stuff like that. But I still, like in my particular field, you know, I'm an electrician. Mm-hmm. and I don't see very many women
Sure.
working in my trade. And then when I do, they're just not physically as strong as me. And like, a couple weeks ago, I was, we were doing some we were working in a vault. Which is you have a manhole cover.
Okay.
So, here it is. I'm working with this woman. She's 5'2", 120 pounds at that, if that.
Yeah.
And we have this. What do you call it? Like a crowbar with wheels and a chain to pull this manhole cover off. And so what does that mean? I mean, on top of it, she's a journeyman too. I'm an apprentice, so
yeah.
Of course I'm going to pull the damn thing off. She can't do it.
Yeah, yeah.
So
absolutely, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. These realities exist. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, in 10 years from now, will there be some sort of technology that some machine that I don't know makes the manhole cover weigh only 20 pounds? I don't know, probably, or a new type of crowbar, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But just from what I'm seeing, yeah, we have all this stuff involved in our society, and electricity, this, that, third, technology, but I just don't see women. Even if they could, I don't see them wanting to do a lot of this stuff. I mean, we have so many. There was a sign on the I-5. I drive the I-5 every day going to and from work. There was a big, huge-ass sign trying to get. It was a recruiting poster for the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers to get more women involved. And there are just not that many women even showing up. Maybe it's the math.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I belong to that same union.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and and so is my dad. I mean, it's kind of like a family thing, I guess now.
All right.
Yeah, it's I saw that initiative too, and it's just I mean, look, you can't get women to do these kind of jobs. I mean, I agree with you, but I think the problem resides less with the fact that you can't get women to do these kind of jobs, and more with the fact that men do these kind of jobs for oftentimes shit pay, and they don't demand. I've worked in manufacturing and engineering for a very long time, and a lot of men, they become very proficient at their jobs, they become very good at it, but because they have a wife at home, they don't want to rock the boat, they don't want to demand anything, they don't want to demand the type of compensation for skilled labor that they could get away with if they weren't scared of the fact that, if we unionize and if we strike and they bring in scabs, I'm not going to have a way to provide for my wife and she's going to divorce me, right? I think that's like, I mean, have you noticed that at all?
In a different context, yeah, because when I was going to get out of the Army, that caused a big amount of strife in my house. And at one point, my wife admitted to me that she was gonna leave me if I got out of the Army. And I'm just like, that would have made a whole lot of fucking sense. Let me tell you.
What would have made a whole lot of sense?
Her leaving me because I wanted to get out of the Army.
Okay. Did she ever go into like detail? Like, was it a money thing? You were going to be making less money if you did, or
it was a money thing.
Okay.
It was basically a money thing, and I said, well, first of all, I already told you, that the money's going to be as good, if not better. Actually, now it's better.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be as stressed out and pissed off as I was when I was active duty. Because, example, and I don't know how familiar you are with the military, but when you're when you're a sergeant or a staff sergeant, you've got people that you're in charge of.
Okay.
So you've got to make sure that, like, say on weekends, you got to make sure they're not doing any stupid shit.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you're going to get the occasional phone call from your, either platoon sergeant or more than likely your, platoon sergeant. And he's going to, call you at, 6 o'clock in the evening, if you're home, once you get home, and tell you about, what's going to happen tomorrow, this, that, and the third. Then you have to send text messages out to everyone, in your squad or your team, so that they know what's going on. And just, so literally, once I got home from work at about maybe 5:30, I'd spend about half an hour texting back and forth, and then my wife would get pissed off.
Yeah.
How come you don't fucking turn the phone off and sit and have dinner with us? I can't. I'm like, look, honey, I can't do that because I'm gonna get
you're tired after a day of work for one, right?
Yeah, you know, and yeah, I wish I could turn my matter of fact, now that I'm out, sometimes I just turn my phone off and just be like, haha, I can turn this bitch off.
Yeah. Well, it's like I'm myself. I'm in a relationship, and see this shooter is why like. And this isn't knocking you or your relationship whatsoever. Please don't take it that way. But
I won't.
Yeah, this is why, like, it's so important for me in my life to never, ever, ever get married. Not only that, it's not only that I don't believe in the concept, right? But with the girl that I'm with now, if she ever wants to like bitch about me not paying enough attention to her when I'm tired. Again, like you said, I'll just turn my phone off. And if she has a problem with that, she can just go find somebody else, right? Like, I mean, not obviously if she does that, we're not together anymore at that point, right? And I don't want to be with some girl that's going around, sleeping around or whatever. But, she has that option, right? If you don't like what you're getting here, just leave. Just leave, right? And at that point, she understands that there's consequences to her actions. And that, if she acts out of line, then she doesn't get, to enjoy spending time with me. And I'd like to think that, she's, I mean, obviously I don't pay this woman's bills. I don't pay, I don't like give her gifts or anything like that. So obviously she's with me for some sort of, aspect of my personality or whatever. Right. Mm-hmm. And so, it'll stay that way. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, there's no incentive. I mean, it's just, that's just scary to me. If a woman was to say to me, if a woman was to say, and I don't know if you didn't know this when you first got married, and there's a lot of men that don't, but if a woman now, like after having taken the red pill and knowing the capacity for harm that a woman can wield inside of a marriage, if I saw a woman say that to me and she was like, well, you better talk to me, we're married, or if you quit your job, I'm leaving you, that would scare the shit out of me. I mean, that would be very fucking scary to me,
Well, see, the thing is, she didn't say it at that particular moment. She told me this like after I'd already gotten out and after
Sure.
After everything, worked like I said it would.
Okay.
Yeah. And I just.
So you didn't have like the at this point, did you even know about the red pill or?
Yeah, I did. It was I mean, this was only like a year and a half ago.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And that's when I really I think that was the culmination of when all of this information that I had taken in really meant something.
Yeah.
Because, I could see the male disposability aspect of it without a doubt, because it was, well,
at that point you're seeing that it's one thing to know that fire is hot, right?
Right.
But then when you're right next to like a raging inferno and your hand is like somebody's forcing your hand into that raging inferno, then it becomes a whole nother thing entirely. Right. And it really crystallizes then. Yeah,
it did. And, I don't know how to describe this. I think she just went into a full-blown panic attack.
Yeah.
As far as me getting out. I mean, she called a a psychologist and whatever, and we went and had
Mm-hmm.
had this meeting with this relationship counselor who happened to be a woman, by the way, of course.
All right.
And the woman seemed to be agreeing with her that I just needed to stay in the military. The environment. Oh, not the
Well,
not the environment.
did you explain to her? I'm assuming here that being in the military, and you said you did 2 tours in Iraq, or
Yeah.
so you are at the very least potentially expected to go into combat. I'm not going to ask you if you did or didn't, but you were at least potentially expected to go into combat. I mean, you're risking your life here.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I've been diagnosed with PTSD.
Yeah, and it's so so the therapist, who was a woman, told you that you should stay in this in this military environment where she knows like veterans are coming back extremely damaged, psychologically speaking, and that's not easy shit. I mean, it's not. Again, I don't want to know your specific details, but I know personally a lot of combat veterans that went into combat and they're not the same person anymore, and it's probably because they had to take human life and they don't know how to deal with it, and probably will never find out how to. I mean, how do you? I mean, normal human beings are not, despite all of the I'm really convinced that in the military they make you shave your head and wear a uniform and wear a dog tag in order to kind of deconstruct your identity to whatever degree they can, and reshape it in what they want you to be, I guess. But
oh yeah, that's what the idea of boot camp is. It's a breakdown process, and then once you're broken down, that you should be broken down by X amount of time, and then that's when they start to build you back up into this ferocious fucking monster of
and look, it's, and once you get there, if people are shooting at you, you're gonna fucking shoot back. You want to survive,
right?
So you a lot of these soldiers end up doing very violent things that they are physically capable of. I mean, they're physically capable of pulling a trigger and taking a human life in self-defense, or even when they flip out and go crazy, just sometimes just going into a village and shooting people because they've just gone crazy at that point.
Right.
But they're not psychologically prepared for this. They're not psychologically prepared for the ramifications. So, here's this therapist telling you that, you should subject yourself further to that environment, and, knowing, I mean, she's a therapist. She has to be familiar with PTSD and its effects.
And that's what it tell me about it. And I'm just like, wait a minute. So you and my wife are both agreeing that I need to stay in this, not only is deploying, basically bad for you.
Yeah.
But this lifestyle is extremely stressful. You're wearing a uniform every day. You've got a zillion things you've got to do. You're even when you're not deployed, you got different field training events, and then certain schools where they send you over to some other part of the country. You're gone all the time. When you're back here, you're working all the time, and then I'm putting in basically $100,000 worth of work, and I'm only getting maybe 45,000.
Yeah.
The fuck am I doing? No, this doesn't make any sense. And I just said, look, I'm going to cut my losses and run.
Yeah.
And
I'm really concerned. Man, it just gets me mad when I even think about like what they do to veterans. But whatever, that's another fucking time, another story. But I'm really concerned, not just the psychological combat effects, but there's some very, very, very fucking bad shit going on in the Middle East in terms of the type of weaponry they use. I'm sure you're familiar with depleted uranium and the birth defects that are happening over there in Iraq, and the effects on soldiers that it's having. They shoot you up with all sorts of fucked up fucking vaccines and shit that who knows what the fuck is in them. It's just, man, it's not good.
Yeah. I think soldiers have a higher amount of babies who were born with some type of mental problems, and they've been linking that to these vaccines that they've been sticking us up with.
Yeah, and look, I don't know. I mean, it's certainly vaccines are important. I believe in the science of vaccines, but I think specifically in terms of what they're shooting the soldiers up with, nobody knows what the hell's in this stuff. I mean, it's just like most okay, think about your average soldier who's somewhere between the ages of 18 and 22 or 24 or something, right? Like,
Right.
I mean, I'm assuming they get in there at a young age.
Most do. Yeah, I was a little bit older.
Yeah, and so, they're not questioning what type of shit that these people are shooting them up with.
No, they're not.
I mean, what 18 to 22-year-old, investigates that shit?
They don't. That's the thing. They don't.
Yeah.
These guys are they're 18, 20 something year old kids, and they're not thinking about that stuff. They're thinking about, okay, how do I, get through today so I can go back to my barracks room and drink beer, play Call of Duty, or go to the club tonight. That whole bit. They're not thinking about that type of stuff, and they're young. That's not really their thing anyway. So I'm not mad at them. I'm more mad at the system.
No.
And it really pisses me off, man. Especially, it just happens every so often. You heard about the VA scandal with in Arizona. That whole bit. It's
refresh my memory. It sounds familiar.
Somebody went somewhere to some VA hospital in Arizona. I'm pretty sure it was Arizona, and just the quality of care this particular person got was just really shitty. And then supposedly there was some recording or something somewhere where one of the people who works in the VA hospital said, "I wish these fuckers would all die," or something like that. I mean, so this is this horrible veteran care has been going on for years and years and years. I mean, there's another story I just recently came across. This guy is either one of his legs or both of his legs had been blown off. Mm-hmm. He goes to the VA hospital, and they want to X-ray his fake leg to prove that it's fake. Like,
what the fuck?
It just,
that's crazy.
And there's another they got a little hustle going on here at Fort Lewis, which is where I was stationed. I still live in the Seattle Tacoma area, but they got a little hustle going on. At least that's what I call it. Mm. See, when you out process, they don't tell you to go to the VA liaison and fill out your paperwork and stuff so that you can get disability. Mm-hmm. The disability office is a small little room tucked away way in the back of one particular building, and if you don't know it's there, you won't see it.
Yeah.
So you go through all your other stuff, turn in all your gear, all the other crap, out process, whatever, and then bam, you're done. Yeah. So once that's over, if you forgot to fill out your stuff for VA, then it's a big pain in the ass, and then the process takes forever, and that whole bit. Luckily, I had copied my whole medical record.
Okay,
that's one of the things they're going to want you to do. So if you transfer out and then fly back to wherever you're from, which probably won't be where you're stationed at, and you want to start that whole process, it's a pain in the ass. I mean, you're going to have to go find some military base somewhere, and hopefully they can help you. So yeah, they know what they're doing, man.
My cousin, he this August he finishes his 8-year contract with the military. He deployed once to Afghanistan, mm-hmm. and he tells me basically with the VA, they just kind of try to, if you're depressed, they put you on depression meds, and if you have pain, they just give you painkillers and tell you to figure it out.
So many guys are on them all these Prozacs, and other shit. I'm just like, God damn.
Yeah. You know, what it really gets me is after, I don't know, 5, 10 years go by after some of these guys in the military have done their tours. They're all fucked up sometimes because they did God knows what overseas and, in the name of America. And then, they don't know how to fucking hold a job. They're all psychologically damaged and they're homeless. And we kind of give these soldiers this fake, like, oh, thank you for your service and, pat on the head and that's it. But, if you end up homeless, nobody's going to take care of these guys.
No, they're not. And it's real. It's real. I mean, you ever notice how many guys are homeless and they got, ACU pants on?
Like a purple heart or something.
Yeah.
And he's homeless.
Yeah.
It reminds me of, I don't know if you were following this or whatever, but I'm sure you know something about it. If you were into like conspiracy stuff or whatever. But if you see how they treated the first responders after 9/11, and I'm from New York and I actually know a good deal of first responders, and a lot of them got all sorts of respiratory diseases. I don't know if this is a rumor. This could be, but I've seen it on numerous occasions where I believe like Planned Parenthood offered the wives of like deceased first responders that were pregnant to have free abortions and shit, So
what?
Yeah, it was just like some crazy shit. I'm gonna see if I can find that somewhere. But it's like just the ultimate. If that's true, I mean, that's I'm gonna try to find that. If that's true, it's just like the ultimate spit in the face. I mean, these men gave their lives for, in the worst terrorist attack against American soil, on American soil in history, and their legacy is like being erased because these women don't want to like go it alone. But either way, let's say that's completely false, right? And that didn't happen. Even still, you have the like these. Like a large portion of the 9/11 first responders got some sort of like respiratory disease. A lot of them got cancer from who knows what the fuck came out of that fucking collapsing building on that day. And a lot of sickness, and nobody really gave a shit about them. Tons of them are dead.
Wow.
Yeah, tons of them just they got some mysterious disease. They ended up with lung cancer, and they're just nobody talks about it anymore.
Wow.
Yeah. Just whenever you get a chance, Google first responders cancer or first responders disease. The 9/11 first responders disease, and you'll see there's just tons of like weird respiratory diseases that they just started coming down with a few years after. It all happened, and tons of them aren't around anymore because they got cancer or whatever. It's just like a really weird, you want to talk about conspiracies. There's just a lot of weird shit going on with the 9/11 first responders.
Wow.
Yeah, let's see. Health effects. Yeah, just Google like health effects surrounding September 11th.
Yeah,
attacks.
I'm looking at it right now. I'm gonna save it and read it later.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. Let's see. Found the wiki or whatever. I know that's not like completely reliable, but yeah, definitely. There was tons of asbestos in the World Trade Center.
I thought they outlawed that shit.
I thought they did too, but I mean, this was built in what year? Let's see. On November, several dozen recovery personnel have developed cancer. To date, 75 workers at Ground Zero have been diagnosed with blood cell cancers that a half dozen top doctors and epidemiologists have confirmed as having been likely caused by that exposure. So that's in 2006. Eventually, I believe there was this giant like class action lawsuit on their part of the first responders, so that they could get like health care and I believe they won something, but it was like it took them like almost a decade, and it was like a very, like, it was a paltry sum compared to, I mean, if it can be definitively shown that a man, went into those like falling fucking towers and died or inhaled something that eventually claimed his life years later, this person's family and should be like, or at least his immediate family should be, through taxpayer dollars, like they should be taken care of for life. This is a person
Right.
who, gave his life to make sure that New Yorkers and Americans we're safe. And like, I mean, this is like the worst terrorist attack ever in United States history. So it's like the fact that they didn't take care of these people really pisses me off.
Yeah. And now I'm thinking like male disposability again
Yeah.
it ties into my wife wanting my son to get married.
Well, did you like try to explain to her like what I just told you, that look, this doesn't mean that he can't have like a woman that he regards as his wife.
I know I said, yeah, I think he should be able to have a relationship and stuff like that. I'm just saying they shouldn't live together. Definitely not move in together because,
The cohabitation laws and
cohabitation laws and that whole bit. I don't want them to be lonely or whatever, but I'm just letting them. I'm going to let them know, hey, this is what's up.
yeah. Well, look, what I don't understand is if women have such a problem with this, right? Why aren't they getting their asses up and I'm not talking about like this cheap kind of lip service fucking I'm gonna take a high fashion selfie and call myself a woman against feminism type of shit, right? I'm talking about, you better start in mass protesting this shit, be visibly seen, in front of Capitol Hill saying we want these laws repealed now, today, right? I mean, if you really want men to I mean, and personally myself and a lot of MGTOW we're done with marriage forever, right? Mm-hmm. But, I'm sure that there are a lot of men that are, that would be willing to relax their stance on marriage if women visibly reverse the laws. I'm of the opinion that once the laws can become this way, they can become this way again. And so I'm done with marriage, and and again, I just don't believe in the concept as a whole. Like, I have a disrespect towards towards the entire concept of marriage, but some men don't. Mm-hmm. So if women really wanted their sons, I guess, to get married, why aren't they like in mass protesting the shit that's going on in the family courts? Because, well, I've answered my own question. It's to their advantage, and I truly believe, Shooter, that women and again, women are not fundamentally evil or anything like that, but they have something inside of them that is obsessed with their safety and their security. And I think that on a tribal level, they have a loyalty towards their own gender that supersedes the loyalty they have even to their own sons on some deep primordial subconscious level.
It's the Borg.
Yes,
like
the Borg consensus. I mean, it's just, yeah. I just don't see them doing it. I mean, women technically, if they really wanted to, could have these laws repealed pretty quickly if they were serious about politically mobilizing against it. They don't. They take little pictures and they say, I'm against feminism, now shower me with attention,
I and that's the same thing I said to my wife. I said, you know what? If you don't like it, you and all the other moms out there who want to have grandchildren need to fucking do something.
Yeah.
And her response was, well, I don't want to join a group called Men's Rights Activism. I said, fine, start your own.
But see, that's what we're witnessing now with Gamergate and all of this. It would appear that women do not want to start their own groups and and pursue change that way, or pursue anything that they want to pursue that way. They want to ingratiate themselves into men's groups and have us do the work of building these communities. And when they're nice and comfortable and when it's nice and easy, they then want to step in and say, oh, accept us now, and everything has to change to kind of accommodate us, and so that's how you get the Anita Sarkeesians, who's like, there's, I don't know if you're a gamer or whatever, but E3 has just happened or whatever,
yeah.
The annual video game festival, and they played clips of like Dune and Fallout 4, and here is like Anita Sarkeesian complaining, "Oh, this is gratuitous violence and it needs to stop," and it's like, holy shit, these people have become like the religious right that tried to like ban video games 10 or 15 years ago and put all these stupid ass, fucking parental advisory explicit lyric signs on like rap music tapes and shit, you know? I mean, this is what these people have become now.
Yeah. And I don't understand why she doesn't just go off and make her own freaking games.
No, because she doesn't have the talent for that. You see, that takes talent.
She's a dumb fucking bitch. I know.
You know, she doesn't have the talent to make her own game. She doesn't. She probably knows. I mean, I don't know this for a fact, but she probably knows absolutely nothing about programming video games. None of the languages, the computer languages that are required to know. You know, so you can create your own game. From what I understand, the whole brouhaha that kicked off Gamergate was with that one chick. What's her name? Oh man, the chick that like slept her way through like gaming journalism. What's her name? Zoe Quinn.
Yeah,
Zoe Quinn, and she made like this really lame, boring ass game called like Depression Quest, and it was just like it was literally it was a like I guess I couldn't stomach it, so I don't know the exact details, but it was basically you're a person. It's a game about trying to overcome depression. I mean, that sound fucking entertaining as hell? You know, but they have a problem with Dune or Doom because it's too violent, right? Well, at least Doom is fun, right?
Right.
I mean, so in the world that these people would like to see, they would like a bunch of mediocre, boring ass games that are politically correct. And in doing so, they would sacrifice the fun and sometimes controversial and sometimes extremely violent games that actually entertain people.
And the thing is, ain't nobody going to buy them either.
No.
That's
But you know, I wonder if because I've given a lot of thought to this, and I wonder if what these people are really doing is erecting some kind of defense mechanism. The people like Anita Sarkeesian know that her bread and butter relies on the gaming industry continuing to put out these controversial games, or at least controversial to her. So she cannot survive, she cannot live and collect $160,000 in a single Kickstarter without these games continuing to be produced. So, these are professional complainers, people that need the controversy in order to continue to
their hustle.
Yeah, to sustain themselves. They're like the televangelists of the gaming industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, so she understands that she needs this to continue. And honestly, I wonder what she's gonna do, because at a certain point, people have to become hip to like what she's doing here, or maybe not. I mean, maybe this will go on for. Maybe these people will be victorious and we'll get like more and more sanitized bullshit games that nobody wants to buy. And you'd be surprised the amount of like self-censorship that people engage in. And you get, if Anita Sarkeesian put out a game, you'd get a bunch of like white knights, David Futrell types that want to show how, PC and tolerant they are, and they'd go buy that game, even if it was a shitty game. Right? She'd have like an inherent market for her stuff. People that want to show everybody else how tolerant and great they are, and then they'd go buy the Anita Sarkeesian game.
Well, then I think she'd make one game and people would buy it, and then once they realize it sucked,
yeah,
that was it. So hopefully, if she saved her money.
That's the thing. Of course, there's a limit to how much bullshit people are going to swallow in hopes of appearing tolerant and all that. But then the next Anita Sarkeesian is going to come on, or next time it's going to be. I'm predicting that the next foray into a male dominated culture and sub community, women are going to start getting into the hip hop community, and they're going to start and I'm not talking about like sanitized like pop music that they're passing off as hip hop, but they're going to start talking about how violent, top themes and topics exist in hip hop, and they're going to start colonizing that, and they're going to start talking about how we need to solve the problem of sexism in hip hop, and that's going to be like it starts all over.
Didn't someone try that already?
I'm sure it's possible. And in the past, people tried to, insert this bullshit agenda into video games. It took a couple tries before it could be, I guess, perfected and correctly implemented in the way that Anita's doing it. And I'm sure, I mean, I remember shit back in the day when, The Chronic was out, like, so Dr. Dre's The Chronic, and, kind of like West Side hip hop was, like, popular. Mm-hmm. There were like congresswomen, I believe they were like black congresswomen or some influential female politician that were talking about how, Snoop Dogg talks bad about women, and they were trying to get it banned and outlawed and shit like that. Of course, that didn't work. But I think that people like Anita Sarkeesian and her ilk are in constant attempts to discover new communities that they can initiate this process into and capitalize off of this process. In a way, it's almost like a business plan. And so, you can't really knock the hustle because people are allowing themselves to be taken like this.
Yeah. And I gotta give them that. The people who are running these different things is that, they at least they figured out something, some kind of a way.
It's really, I really believe that it's some kind of like survival mechanism. A lot of people talk about like capitalism, and capitalism's great, and a lot of and I know you say you're like kind of like anarcho-capitalist, and that's great, but like I think what a lot of like libertarians and anarcho-capitalists don't see is that there are always going to be people that don't have the talent to invent something or corner some kind of market or provide some kind of useful service that do happen to have the skill and ability to, initiate some kind of social or governmental regulation on industry, on the people, the actual creators and the innovators, that are going to allow them to like suck off of that teat and get their sustenance and their provision that way. Right, and something has to be done about these people, and these people have to be addressed. And in order to be addressed, they have to be understood, right? So, I think if we want to move towards a society where there's less intervention into the process of economy and trade and all of that, we're going to have to ask ourselves, what do we do with these people? Because these people are going to exist, and these people have to eat. And, so they're going to, if they have the skill, they're going to find a way to compel whatever authoritative institutions. It doesn't even, let's say we get rid of government tomorrow, there's still going to be some sort of expected behavior, and that's going to coalesce into some kind of law or whatever, or some kind of regulation. I mean, human beings regulate. We do that. It doesn't, I'm actually writing a blog post on like reputation-based laws and how they arise and stuff like that. Like if you sell on eBay, your reputation precedes you, right? Mm-hmm. There's always going to be some kind of system that we put in place to try to like modify human behavior or regulate it somehow. And those people are going to exist within that system. And those people that are good, that are not good at innovating, but are good at tweaking that system that we generate randomly or organically, they're going to exist, and they're going to try to use those regulatory systems we naturally create to their benefit and their advantage, right? What do we do with these people?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, besides put them to work, somehow.
Yeah, but,
what do they do?
Yeah, like some of these guys don't want to work, or they want to generate like false disciplines or services or goods, like, right? What are you talking about? Like race studies or women's studies, right? Just completely unnecessary stuff, right? Like just silly shit that nobody, Like,
Yeah.
like what actual tangible goods has race or women studies produced for anybody? But yet these institutions persist at every level of our educational process, and businesses are fearful of offending whatever racial group or women, right? They're fearful, and there are real life ramifications for offending women or offending the wrong racial group or offending gays, right? And I don't believe that, I don't know what your personal opinion is, but I don't believe that this is a product of some sort of giant conspiracy. I think that this is how societies structure themselves. I think that as a defense mechanism, our species has devised a means by which groups that have or appear to have been victimized get some sort of class protection or class sympathy from us. And therefore, if you offend these groups, it creates an environment where there are social ramifications for doing so. Any opinions on that?
Okay, here's what I'm picturing in my head is the I need feminism. There was a woman, she made a little I need feminism because my gender studies degree is just as valuable as your mechanical engineering degree.
Yeah.
And I yeah, just like you did, I saw that and I laughed and I just thought, what the fuck is wrong with this woman?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're right. When I see people like that, I'm just like, what do I do with you?
Yeah.
Like, what do
And again, obviously, this chick is not capable of, or she doesn't want to put in the necessary work, or she doesn't have the capability in terms of her intelligence to get a mechanical engineering degree. So, this is in a lot of ways, it's her way of getting hers, right? Everybody has individual needs and wants, and they're trying to get those individual needs and wants satiated and satisfied.
Right.
For the people that don't have the talent to or that just don't, like I have a friend who, he's a great guy, he's like one of the best people that I know, but like he does not take care of his body. Like he doesn't take care of himself, and he's constantly he's overweight. He doesn't put effort in, and I really believe that it's just not in him to, and this guy can't go out and get a job that is like physically intensive, that might pay more than, whatever job that he has now. That isn't. These people, they just don't have it in them. Some of them, or they don't have the intelligence for a high pay to thrive in a high paying field or start their own business, right? There are going to be failures in the capitalist system, and capitalism generates a huge amount of wealth, but we still have to, what are we going to do with? What are we going to do with the veteran, right? That has served his country, and now he's out in the streets. He has no real employable skills, right? And he's so damaged at that point that he's not going to be able to go into some office environment and, thrive there or whatever, or start his own business or whatever. What do we do with these people,
Well, and I kind of did this to myself, is that I realized that, look, I don't have, I did something and I got lucky. Now, I realized that, hey, I for my own physical and mental health, I have to get out of the military.
Yeah.
So what do I know I can't sit in an office in front of a computer all day. I can't do it. So I got to find something blue collar. Now, before I joined the military, I was a truck driver, so I thought about going back into that. But not long haul. There's lots of local jobs too. Which
Yeah.
you do your thing every day. So once I found out about the IBEW and stuff like that, they had a specific veteran program.
Okay.
And one of the things that they did was for 2 weeks you have to go through a class called soft skills. And to describe, I don't know how to describe it. It's like it's almost like a you are wonderful, you are me, you are great, that
Hmm.
kind of thing. It's a kind of like a big pep talk
Okay.
in a certain kind of way. Um, and for me, it definitely worked. I
Okay.
guess you could say it made me really see the value that I have in myself. And it made me see that, yeah, I'm fucked up. I have, like, through that course, I found out that more than likely I probably have ADD,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I didn't know that. I mean, I've been this way my whole life, but, this is finally the first time that someone actually sat down with me and, said, hey, well, do you do this? Yeah. Do you do that? Yeah. Well, you have all these, markers, so this is probably what you have. Here's some ways that you can, counteract that. So I guess probably the best way to deal with someone like that is, you're going to have to retrain them.
Yeah.
The thing is, are they going to be willing to be
Yeah.
retrained?
Yeah. Yeah. And at a certain age, right? You're stuck in your ways, right? I mean, we're not like, I mean, this process doesn't happen when we're like fucking 8 or 10 years old and our brains are like extremely pliable, right? And they can rearrange themselves or whatever, right? Like these are adults, like 25, 30 years old for the most part, right? When you're like getting into anytime you're getting back into the job market, right? You're usually at least in your 20s, like mid 20s, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think you brought up an interesting point. Isn't it interesting how I think this relates to MGTOW, how you took that test, right? And you it helped you to discover that you might have this. You might have ADD, for example, right?
Right.
And you didn't really realize that, right, until somebody actually gave you the language and the tools to understand that that you have this, like, right? It's amazing how things don't occur to people until they're given to the tools to diagnose certain things, right?
Right.
And I think that's what happens a lot with MGTOW is that you have no idea. I have 20 something thousand subscribers now, and people just over and over, men tell me over and over that I always knew that this is what I was, but I was kind of like by myself, and I didn't know that a community existed and a name was given to this, And I think that that's what men lack these days is that for the men that are MGTOW minded, no language exists until we came and made that language
Right.
that allowed them to even know what they were.
And sadly enough, it's really hard to explain. Well, yeah, it's hard to explain this stuff to people who aren't red pill.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's really like there's a guy I've worked with on a couple jobs. He's just like, man, my wife, she talks to me like shit. She treats me like shit. She tells me I'm fucking stupid and worthless. And I just think to myself,
Yeah.
bro, you're making $100,000 a fucking year.
Yeah.
And you're gonna let this woman tell you that you're worthless, that you
Even
can't,
even if he divorced her, right? Let's say he divorced her today and she got the house and $50,000, right?
right,
This guy's making 100K a year. You will be fine after 2 or 3 years of like a shitty situation.
right,
You know,
right.
it's just crazy to me.
And I just don't. I'm like, how does he let this fucking happen to him?
Dude, this is what I want to talk about specifically in terms of like, maybe I'll leave the racial aspect out of it, but, because I want to talk about that in the future. But I think that, screw it. I'll address it, right?
Okay.
I think that specifically with white men, what I've observed, and yes, I'm stereotyping or, generalizing a race here, fucking, shoot me or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed that with the black community, of course, they had this period of like the crack epidemic and the social engineering that feminism employed that like essentially like incentivized the women to like not have men in the house, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they had already, a lot for a long time. Black men had been experiencing this period of just chaos in terms of how the genders interact with each other, and so black men were kind of ahead of the curve in terms of like what was coming down the pike for the white community and white men and the white nuclear family, I guess, right? So
Right.
black families had already experienced this devastation, and for a lot of reasons, then you see, things like game and like even some like nascent MGTOW principles were starting to like coalesce and originate in the black community, right? More towards like the game side of things, but a mechanism or a set of behaviors was produced by black men, and that's how you saw like how pimping became popular and like like the ghetto or whatever, right? Like you saw these like pimps that like were reviled almost universally by society, but they somehow had control over these women, an extreme amount of control, right? So you started to see this like little subculture form around the black community, but I think that now in the white community, this is it's starting to bleed into like the white families or whatever, and so that chaos is starting to happen. And so I think that white men in particular, this is why their suicide rate is so much higher. I think they're starting to see the effects of like the collapse of the white family, and a bunch of men that who happen to be white, who have not yet experienced the fucking tornado of like feminism and gynocentrism run amok in their communities, are now starting to feel the full effect of that, and it's resulting in a suicide spike for white men. But also you start to see the women are, because a lot of white men, let's face it, most of engineers and stuff are white or whatever. So you have a lot of these men that are in high-paying fields who are white or whatever, and their wives have a vested interest in keeping his self-esteem down, and so they pick at him. Oh, I've seen this so many times with like white married men that I'm friends with. The wife picks at him over and over and over again, and this is sometimes a process that spans years, and it's designed to make his self-worth in terms of how he views himself pretty much down to nothing, even though this guy could be like a high-paying engineer who contributes something valuable to society, who could leave her at any moment, right, and continue on with his life and live a happy, enjoyable life, banging like chicks half his age if he wanted to, right?
Right.
But this process of like breaking down his will and his spirit, it keeps him there. It keeps him there because even though it's a shitty situation, at least it's there, and he knows his wife is there, but he internalizes her abuse, and he sees it as regular, and he's scared because his wife has like demoralized him for all of these years and basically made him feel as though he's like shit, like he's a nobody. He is then afraid to go and meet another girl or just be single and be alone, right? It's a big psychological barrier that you have to break. So I'm just going back to your example of this.
I think I went through that.
What's that?
I think I went through that, but I wasn't afraid to be alone.
Sure, yeah.
And just said, look, this is what I'm going to do. And if you don't like it, then
yeah.
fine.
Well, yeah. Some men are going to have the natural ability to say, when they're confronted with their wife trying to do that to them, they're going to be able to say, no, I'm not dealing with this. A lot of men aren't. Right? And that's my speculation, is that a lot of men are conditioned, even though they're in every real way, other than, I guess, the ability to birth children, their wife's superior, but the wife makes them feel as though they're inferior, because she's threatened by his superiority, his superior ability to fend for himself, right? She knows she's dependent on him. Right. And that's why so many women, once the divorce comes through and once, the alimony starts getting, the alimony comes down the pike, they are so ruthless, right? Because they're like, they see it as an acknowledgement of their inferiority. I think their inferiority in terms of their ability to provide for themselves and stand on their own 2 feet. And so they attack, their ex-husband, and they're like, I'm trying to get as much as I can out of him. And of course, there's the monetary benefit. Nobody denies this, but I think that it's more than that. I think that it's more than that, because you see a lot of these women, they don't just want the alimony or the child support so that they can take care of themselves, but they try to really psychologically ruin men after their divorce so that no other woman would want them.
And that's, and I can't remember, they call that, there was some, I read about this somewhere, with the whole idea of, if a woman dumps you, she doesn't want you anymore, but at the same time, she doesn't want anyone else to have you either.
Yeah. Well, I think it ties into what we talked about before with the Borg consensus, where it's almost like this ingrained female protection protocol that they have deemed this man unworthy of their attraction or whatever, and so it's almost as though it's like when a bee stings. And, of course, when a bee stings, it dies, and, its entrails are pulled out by its stinger. But in the process, it secretes a hormone that warns other bees that, it had to sting. So here's this area where you might have to sting, right? Mm-hmm. In a way, maybe it's some subconscious female desire to, secrete her, I've had to sting hormone on this man. And to warn other women that, he is not good. He is not a good, disposable man that is willing to provide for you and put his needs and wants and desires, before yours or whatever,
Right. Maybe that could be. That could be. I've never thought about it that much, but I mean, I can definitely see why they would, do that, as far as stomping on a guy's self-esteem to keep him in the home,
to keep him conditioned,
right.
To you'd be surprised, how psychologically malleable we are as human beings in terms of we're the only animal that understands the potential finality of death, and yet we can still be so beaten down psychologically that we'll take our own lives,
Yeah.
And I think that says a lot,
And once you look up into that system and say, no, I'm not going to do that anymore, shit gets interesting.
Well, that's when the women start to really go batshit insane.
Right.
I once had a friend, and I'm not going to go into any specific details, but because I don't want to put him on blast or whatever, but he got into a relationship with a girl that would put him down and stuff like that, but eventually he kind of rejected that, and he stood up for himself, and he's like, I'm not dealing with this shit. And at the time I lived with him, and we're both basically I'm essentially mixed Hispanic, but there's this big controversy with Dominicans, especially in the Dominican Republic, where they're trying to get rid of the Haitians because they're too black, essentially. But Dominicans in terms of Dominican culture have a very hard time understanding that the vast majority of them are some type of black, right? They have black ancestry. Dominicans, for whatever reason, I guess they want to feel superior to the mostly visibly African Haitians. They want to pretend that they're all white or whatever, or less black than the rest of the Caribbean, which is all just a bunch of black people mixed with European genetics or whatever, right?
Right.
And so this girl, she called the cops to I was living with him at the time. She called the cops to go get her stuff and made a big giant show of it. And they will get vicious, they will get vicious, and they will try to these. Meanwhile, so these are two black men, basically, right? Myself and my friend, and if you call, this was a white woman. If you call cops to like black men's house, right, and get their like police involved in the lives unnecessarily of two like black men, then you are like essentially my sworn enemy at that point, right? Because you're putting my life at risk at that point. I mean,
Right.
I'm not saying that every cop is some like trigger happy racist that's wants to shoot black people, right? But look, this shit is look, these things do happen, right? Racist cops shoot black men sometimes, and I'm sure there are some black racist cops that shoot white men. Doesn't mean that like if you're some version of black or whatever, you don't get a little tense when you see like when a white cop is like in your vicinity and like you have to interact with them. You're very careful about how you proceed from that point, right?
Right.
But yeah, like that's when the man puts his foot down and says, enough of this bullshit, I'm not dealing with it. That's when you have to worry about false rape accusations. You have to worry about, getting the cops called to your house.
Yeah.
That's when they get vicious,
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they don't like to see a man moving on with his life.
I don't think they do. I really don't. I don't think they do, and I don't. I just look at it as, look, if you're going to dump someone, whatever, you're in a relationship, and you decide, this is the end of it, then just, let them go, and I wish them, wish them well. But
Sure.
for some reason, yeah, a lot of women don't want to see that. They want to see you, I don't know, suffer or something to some extent.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
at the same time, what I also don't get about that is like, oh my God, I swear to God, like my wife made me open a Facebook account so she could play some game. She wanted me to play the game with her so she could steal my little fucking fruits off the island or something like that. Right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like, I got a deluge of like every ex-girlfriend I ever.
Oh boy.
Holy shit. And she's just like, why are you fucking
Yeah.
talking to me? I'm like, I don't, dude, they came to find me. And
Yeah.
some of them, we broke up on bad terms, but for some reason they had to see, what I was doing and all that. And I'm just like, I don't want to fucking talk to you. Like,
Yeah.
what,
Yeah.
like, why are you bothering me?
Yeah. Well, dude, like social media is like a huge. I've seen so many relationships end due to social media.
Oh, yeah.
It's fucking crazy, to be honest, man.
Yeah.
And it's silly sometimes, some of the stuff that goes on there, but I try to stay off of it. I have like a Facebook for my channel and my website where I share like a new article that I put up or whatever, but I try to stay off of it, like Twitter for my channel and all that, but it's just there's too many women like attention whoring on there.
Mm-hmm.
I have like a private Facebook where I stay in contact with people that, but I like never post. I have no pictures of myself up there. It's just not worth it,
Yeah, I could see why you would say that. And my to my government name, Facebook, whatever, all that, yeah, it's not something I do that often.
Yeah.
Oh,
But Shooter, let me I probably should get to finishing this article. Dude, let me ask you. I enjoyed this conversation, by the way, and I want to see if maybe I can get it uploaded